Everything you've been taught about attraction is probably wrong, and that's why you've always felt like you were doing everything right. But still, nothing happened the way you wanted. They said you needed to be present, attentive, available, when, in practice, that only made you predictable. The modern world preaches that whoever shows the most interest wins, but Machiavelli warned us long ago, human beings value the rare, not the obvious. And that's exactly why a man's greatest weapon today is not constant presence, but calculated absence. Strategic indifference isn't coldness, arrogance, or a game. It's a stance. It's the ability to exist in the world with such depth, purpose, and identity that no one ever sees you as something cheap. It's knowing that when you disappear for a while, the whole world starts looking for you, not because you're scarce due to lack, but because you're scarce due to value. It's counterintuitive, I know. After all, you grew up believing you needed to prove you were a good guy, but the guy who's too good is always forgotten first. And here's the point, almost no one dares to tell you, you don't lose attraction because you lack something. You lose attraction because you give everything away too soon. You show too much. You respond too quickly. You adapt too quickly. You feel too much. And nothing kills desire more than someone who never remains a mystery. The truth is harsh, but liberating. It's not presence that creates attraction, it's space. And when you master this art, the art of being selective, rare, firm, and emotionally stable, you change the whole game. And the game starts right here. If something inside you awakened while listening, don't ignore that feeling. This channel isn't about videos, it's about memories. Remember who you were before the fear, before the exhaustion, before the silence. Each new video here is a different reflection of your own soul, an invitation to understand what the world never taught you. The power you seek outside has always been within you. If you feel that this journey speaks to what lives silently within you, sign up now, not to follow yet another creator, but to reconnect with something the world tried to make you forget. Because here, every word was made to heal, each reflection to awaken, and each video serves as a reminder you are not alone on the path back to yourself. Click on subscribe and turn the algorithm into a daily reminder of who you really are. There's a curious paradox that Machiavelli would perfectly understand. The more a man chases, the less he receives, and the more he completely distances himself, the less impact he has. It's as if the universe operates on its own logic, guided by real human nature, not by romantic ideals that are often circulating. The person who pursues too much ends up transmitting a kind of oversupply, which diminishes their psychological value without them realizing it. On the other hand, complete ignorance doesn't work either, because it doesn't create an emotional connection, only distance. The answer lies not in extremes, but in the strategic balance between presence and absence, something that aligns perfectly with the principle of politics guided by reality, not ideals. This is where the invisible game arises between appearing available enough to maintain interest, but not so much as to lose one's own virtù and fortuna. A man needs to understand that seduction is less about impulsive actions and more about emotional control, about maintaining his own loyal armies, which in this case are his habits, his limits, and his posture. And when he uses this balance as a calculated use of force, he stops reacting and starts leading. It is at this point that the dynamic silently changes, and something interesting happens. The reason why chasing doesn't work is simple. When someone feels you're investing more than they are, the balance of attraction is thrown off. The human mind responds to perceived value, not declared value. And when a man insists too much, he transmits, without realizing it, the message that he's willing to break his own limits to be accepted. This eliminates the appearance of virtue, which, according to Machiavelli, is more powerful than real virtue in human interactions. But ignoring the person is also a classic mistake. Ignoring doesn't cure insecurity, it only disguises it. And worse, it doesn't generate emotional connection. It only provokes a war of pride that nobody really wins. The key lies in constant adaptability, adjusting your behavior according to the other person's responses, not according to your emotional impulses. It's like a chess player who understands that each move opens or closes invisible doors. When he masters this, he realizes there's a profound difference between pursuing with anxiety and attracting with presence. The difference between mental pursuit and emotional pursuit is what separates ordinary men from strategic men. Mental pursuit is logical. The man overthinks, overanalyzes, sends too many messages, calculates every response trying to predict impossible futures. Emotional pursuit, on the other hand, is silent. It happens when his mind revolves around the woman all day long, even if he does nothing externally. And that's precisely where he loses himself, because even when still, he remains emotionally submissive. Machiavelli would say that this is surrendering one's own virtue to the chance of someone else's fortune. It's living with decisions based on the expectations of the other person and not on real human nature. The man who wants to attract needs to reclaim his inner territory first, organize his routine, focus on projects, train his body, study something new, ensure that his own loyal armies, his discipline, his mind, his limits, are under his command. When he does this, he creates a state of internal stability that naturally changes the dynamic. And it is precisely here that the next point arises, even more important for this invisible game. There are two types of pursuit, and understanding this difference completely changes the game of attraction. The first is logical pursuit, the kind that stems from cold reasoning. She's beautiful, she has status, it makes sense to invest. It's a good opportunity. It's all very calculated, but not in an intelligent way. It's calculated in a needy way. This is where many fall, thinking that money, status, or benefits are enough to generate connection. Machiavelli warned that decisions guided solely by logic are fragile when they don't take into account real human nature. Logic attracts quickly, but evaporates just as fast because there's no emotional depth. It's temporary and superficial, like a fortune acquired only through luck, not through virtu and fortuna. Those who rely only on what seems valuable lose strength when someone with more momentary brilliance emerges. The end justifies the means, yes, but only when the means are solid. And that's precisely what most ignore until they realize there was another type of pursuit happening beneath the surface. Emotional pursuit, on the other hand, is completely different. It doesn't stem from reasoning, but from feeling. And that's where the power lies. It's when a person feels seen, understood, emotionally touched. It has nothing to do with gifts, constant messages, or desperate attempts. It's about creating an internal impact. Machiavelli knew that what touches the heart controls actions, because emotion shapes perceptions, and perceptions shape behaviors. When someone connects emotionally, the other person's presence becomes a kind of psychological shelter, something that triggers decisions based on real human nature. People remember how you made them feel, not how many times you showed up. Here, attraction becomes lasting, deep, and almost inevitable. And when a man understands how to use this with calculated use of emotional force, without exaggerating, without begging, he ceases to seem like a disposable option and becomes a point of reference. But to reach that level, he needs to understand who he is in this game, pursuer or hunter. It's interesting to note how logical and emotional pursuit often get confused. A man thinks he's creating a connection because he sent 3 messages in a row. He believes he's demonstrating interest, when in reality, he's just revealing his own insecurity. The emotion he transmits isn't connection, it's anxiety. True emotional pursuit, on the other hand, arises when he says something that opens a window in her mind, when she remembers a conversation, when a gesture of his awakens a specific feeling. This can't be bought, forced, or accelerated. It's created with constant adaptability, with structured presence, and above all, with the appearance of virtue, because appearance in the human game matters as much as substance. It's almost like a song that gets stuck in your head without you realizing how it got there. And when that happens, he becomes memorable. And a memorable man never needs to chase, because this is where the difference between being a pursuer or being a hunter begins, the dynamic that truly defines who leads the invisible dance of attraction. The stalker is what Machiavelli would describe as a man guided by ideals, not reality. He believes that persistence demonstrates value, that availability generates trust, that showing interest makes him more desirable. But in practice, each of these gestures diminishes authority, reduces mystery, and destroys the appearance of virtue so essential to any human dynamic. The stalker pleads without realizing it, sends messages that are too long, is always ready, never sets limits, and therefore loses value with each attempt. He doesn't use calculated force, he uses brute emotional force, without strategy. Everything about him communicates urgency. Everything about him communicates, "I need you." Why, and anything that conveys need triggers a natural flight reaction in the other person. It's like trying to hold water in your hands. The more force you use, the faster it slips through your fingers. The stalker's tragedy is simple. He wants to be loved, but he becomes predictable, and predictability kills attraction. On the other side of the board is the hunter, and here enters politics guided by reality, not by ideals. The hunter doesn't chase, he leads. He doesn't beg, he guides. He doesn't offer himself entirely, he positions himself. His limits function as his own loyal armies, protecting his time, his priorities, and his identity. He understands that the end justifies the means when the means are consistent with who he is, not with what he wants to prove. This man knows that scarcity creates value, but he doesn't use it as manipulation. He uses it as a way to maintain his emotional stability. He understands that human desire is not born from excess, but from the right distance. It's like the aroma of strong coffee. You don't need to drink the whole cup to feel the impact, just the intensity gradually building. The hunter knows that each word spoken calmly is worth more than 10 impulsive messages. He moves less, but weighs more. The hunter creates attraction because he lives by decisions based on real human nature. He understands that the other person desires reference, not fragility. They seek solid presence, not approval. Someone who leads with confidence, not someone who functions like an emotional fan, oscillating in all directions. His communication is firm, but natural, charismatic but not exaggerated, interesting but never desperate. He does less, but does it better. And it is in this powerful moderation that his strength is born. He maintains the appearance of virtue even when silent, because his silence is a choice, never an insecure absence. This is the kind of man who awakens curiosity, respect, and a desire to get closer. He doesn't force the game. He creates the environment for the game to happen. And in this invisible dance, the next move is to understand something crucial. Why scarcity, used in the right way, shapes this entire dynamic. Scarcity is one of the most powerful principles of true human nature, and Machiavelli knew this even before modern psychology existed. Human beings value what is limited, selective, and rare. That's why, initially, limited contact, once a week, works so well. It's not a game, it's not manipulation. It's respecting your time and testing whether the other person's interest is real or just convenience. Scarcity creates space for the imagination to work, and imagination is a stronger ally than any message. When presence is constant, the brain normalizes. When it's moderate, the brain values it. The difference is brutal, and those who understand this adopt a posture aligned with virtù and fortuna, controlling what they can control and letting curiosity do the rest. The end justifies the means when the means is maintaining your identity and not dissolving yourself just to please. Scarcity is, therefore, the first wall that separates men who pursue from men who attract. Not always being available doesn't mean ignoring or being cold. It means having a life. It means having your own loyal armies, career, academia, books, projects, friends, rest, all well organized. None of that should disappear when someone new enters your life. When a man is always free, he communicates that his world revolves around that person. When he is selectively available, he communicates that he lives a solid reality, guided by authentic priorities. This automatically increases his appearance of virtue, making him someone worthy of curiosity. After all, what is more attractive? Someone who is always there as if nothing is happening, or someone who appears with a strong presence but without exaggeration, like someone whose life doesn't depend on anyone's response. It is this balance that demonstrates calculated use of force, not brutally pushing away, not clinging desperately, just existing firmly. Creating curiosity through strategic absence is an art few master. It's not about disappearing, that's childish. It's about offering quality presence and valuable silence. It's almost like a good series. It ends the episode at its peak, leaving you wanting more. And that's no coincidence. It's a strategy based on human nature. When you know the right moment to withdraw, the other person doesn't feel abandoned. They feel anticipation. Anticipation creates emotion, and emotion creates connection. This is politics guided by reality, not by ideals. You understand that well-applied scarcity produces desire. Strategic absence also protects your energy. It prevents you from falling into mental pursuit and keeps you aligned with constant adaptability. And it is precisely this type of calculated presence that opens space for an essential behavior in the game of attraction, leading, not asking permission. In the game of attraction, leadership begins with how you structure the interaction. Men who ask permission for everything communicate insecurity without realizing it. When someone asks, "When are you free?" it conveys a sense of being overly available, like a servant waiting for orders. The question, "Which days are you free?" completely changes the picture. It's not rude, it's not bossy, it's clear. And clarity is power. Machiavelli would say, this is the calculated use of force, not physical force, but the force of direction. The man who leads positions himself naturally, organizes the meeting, defines the plan, suggests places, and doesn't leave everything in the other person's hands. He assumes the role of guide, not escort. This not only improves the dynamic, but also increases his appearance of virtue, as it conveys maturity and decision-making based on real human nature. The end justifies the means when the means are your posture, and posture is something you feel even before you realize it. Giving instructions instead of making passive requests doesn't mean being authoritarian, it means being assertive. When a man says, "Let's grab coffee at that new place on Thursday," he demonstrates initiative, something that automatically activates the perception of competence. If the person can't, they'll say so, and that's okay. Assertiveness is magnetic because it represents emotional stability, and stability is a silent form of power. This is where a man stops acting like the pursued and starts acting like the hunter, keeping his own loyal armies in order. organized time, defined plans, clear priorities. He doesn't live waiting for signs, he lives creating paths. This makes his presence more impactful. When someone guides calmly, the other relaxes. And in the art of human communication, making the other relax is a sophisticated form of leadership. Establishing the structure of interaction isn't about playing a character. It's about embodying a posture that Machiavelli would call politics guided by reality, not by ideals. The reality is simple. People feel safer around those who know where they're going. And this has nothing to do with arrogance, but with constant adaptability, knowing how to adjust plans without losing focus. An emotional leader doesn't ask for validation, doesn't beg for reciprocity, doesn't act out of fear of making mistakes. They observe, propose, adjust. They move the interaction like someone leading a dance. One firm step, another flexible, another calculated. This mixture creates naturalness. When a person masters this, they realize that, unintentionally, they begin to generate more emotional connection. And it is precisely this connection, and not cold or factual conversations, that defines the next chapter of this journey. Most people don't realize it, but talking only about facts is one of the quickest ways to become forgettable. Factual conversations are necessary, of course, but they don't create emotional impact. Talking about work, the weather, college, routine, all of that is safe, but shallow. Machiavelli would say that this is the type of dialogue guided by ideals. You think you're doing well because you're not making mistakes, when in reality, you're not creating anything at all. Emotional conversations, on the other hand, are those that touch something internal. They are questions that make the person remember something, feel something, relive a specific scene. This generates connection because it activates real human nature. It's as if you leave a trace in the other person's emotional memory, something that doesn't evaporate. And this doesn't require exaggeration. It requires calculated use of force, knowing when to open an emotional door and when to remain in strategic silence. The end justifies the means when the means is depth, without rushing. Questions that evoke feelings are simple but rare. Asking, "How was your day?" is factual. Asking, "What was the best moment of your day?" is emotional. One question creates information, the other creates atmosphere. And atmosphere is what keeps two people connected. When you make the other person relive emotions, you activate sensory memories, smell, color, texture, sensation. That is powerful, that is human, and this is where many go wrong. They try to be interesting by talking a lot, when they could be unforgettable by talking little, but talking correctly. This approach creates your appearance of virtue because you seem like someone who truly sees the other person. And seeing the other person is a rare gesture. It is also a form of virtue and fortune, since it combines conscious skill with the natural effect you create. Emotional conversations are not too intense, they are too real. Emotional connection also stems from well-placed vulnerability. It's not that dramatic vulnerability, thrown on the table as if it were a cry for help. It's a controlled, mature vulnerability that creates identification. It's the kind of comment that shows you're human, but not wounded, strong, but not inaccessible. This generates emotional trust, a form of silent power. And silent power always wins over the desperate quest to impress. Machiavelli would call this decisions based on real human nature, making room for emotion without losing composure. A well-conducted emotional conversation is like turning on a soft light in a dark room. It doesn't dazzle, but reveals. And it's this kind of revelation that prepares the ground for something even more crucial, the first date and the right moment to stop while everything is at its peak. The first date is where many men lose their composure without even realizing it. They arrive nervous, talk too much, try to prove their worth, overdo their presence. And all of this conveys the exact opposite of what they want. The first date isn't about impressing, it's about observing. This is where the strategic gaze that Machiavelli would call politics guided by reality, not by ideals, comes in. The reality is simple. Signs of interest exist, but they don't appear when you force them. They appear when you are stable, calm, present, breathing slowly. When the other person asks questions, maintains eye contact, looks at your mouth while you speak, adjusts their hair, laughs easily, these are the signs. Reading this doesn't require talent, but rather constant adaptability, being in the moment instead of being consumed by one's own anxiety. The man who masters this doesn't chase, doesn't try to prove himself, doesn't show off. He is simply there, whole, but without urgency. Ending at the peak is one of the most powerful and least applied techniques in the game of attraction. Most people try to prolong the date when it's going well, as if afraid of losing the opportunity. But prolonging it too much transforms magic into normality, and normality into boredom. Ending at the peak creates a strong emotional memory, something Machiavelli would call the appearance of emotional virtue. You become someone who knows when to stop, without seeming needy or excessive. This is where the calculated use of force comes in. You control the rhythm. When the date is at its best, laughter, connection, pleasant energy, you end it. It's not escapism, it's strategy. You leave space for her brain to work on its own, create anticipation. Imagine you relive the moment. The end justifies the means when the means is to leave the person wanting to continue, not wanting to leave. And the kiss, this is the part many people overcomplicate. A strategic kiss isn't a prize for the date, nor a demonstration of conquest. It's a natural consequence of reading the signals. If the energy is good, if the atmosphere is light, if there's gradual physical closeness, a touch on the arm, prolonged eye contact, discreet smiles, the moment will come on its own. Forcing it is a mistake. Hesitating too much is another. The kiss should be firm yet gentle, another form of calculated use of force. And if you want to improve this instinct, train your perception daily. Watch series, movies, couples on the street. Notice non-verbal cues. This enhances your virtù and fortuna, part skill, part sensitivity. After the kiss, stay calm. Don't prolong it excessively. Don't try to guarantee anything. Don't stretch the date to the maximum. Cut it off at the peak, because it's precisely this cut that prepares the ground for the next move, learning to be selective by choice, not out of fear. Selective availability is the skill that separates emotionally strong men from those who become dependent on female attention. Being too present communicates neediness. Being too absent communicates disinterest. The right balance is what Machiavelli would call politics guided by reality, not by ideals. You show up when you should and live your life when you shouldn't. When a woman begins to show interest, many men make the mistake of giving up everything: routine, training, work, hobbies, and become completely available. This destroys their appearance of virtue because it shows that their own loyal armies, their personal life, their purpose, their commitments, were fragile all along. Selective availability is saying yes without saying, "I have nothing else going on." It's a posture. It's using your time with calculated use of force, firm but conscious. This keeps your energy organized and your presence valuable. Being selectively available means maintaining a stable balance of attraction. When she invests, you respond. But don't throw yourself at her. When she shows interest, you reciprocate. But don't reveal your entire routine. This creates a natural, mature, balanced dance. Machiavelli would say this is decisions based on real human nature, because the truth is simple. Everything that is always available loses psychological value. And this applies to people, opportunities, businesses, even perfumes and restaurants. The difficult part is maintaining emotional stability when her interest increases. Many panic at the first sign of coldness, but her coldness is not a threat. It's a test of your stability. And those with constant adaptability respond calmly, not desperately. They understand that too much presence suffocates. Total absence drives people away, and the middle ground fuels curiosity. Curiosity is the fuel of attraction. Selective availability also means not confusing investment with submission. You can like her, you can respond, you can invite her. But you shouldn't bend over emotionally. You shouldn't cancel everything because of a message. You shouldn't rearrange your world to fit into her universe. That's stalker behavior, not hunter behavior. And the hunter protects his territory. He maintains training, studies, projects, plans. These are his own loyal armies. They are what sustain his identity, and a solid identity is irresistible. Selective availability makes each encounter more intense, each message more meaningful, each presence more memorable. And it is precisely this mark that makes the other person curious about you. But curiosity doesn't prevent the inevitable tests. Those moments when she pulls away, cools off, or tests your limits. And that's where many crumble, because they don't understand women's tests. Tests from women are inevitable, and they arise mainly when she realizes you're a man of value, not because she wants to bring you down, but because that's how human nature works. Everyone tests what seems strong to see if it truly is. Machiavelli already said that appearances without consistency don't last, and these tests serve exactly that purpose, to measure consistency. Therefore, when she sends colder messages, takes longer to respond, or seems distant, it doesn't mean immediate rejection. Often it's just an unconscious way of assessing your emotional stability. The problem is that most men panic at this point, react with desperation, send long texts, ask, "Did something happen?" And this destroys the entire appearance of virtue that has been built. The unbridled emotional reaction is an instant plunge into pursuit. And pursuit, at this stage, becomes self-sabotage. But the man who possesses constant adaptability reacts differently. The best way to deal with women's tests is simple. Don't react emotionally. When she cools off, you maintain your composure. When she takes her time, you don't rush. When she pulls away, you don't chase after her. This isn't coldness, it's balance. It's the calculated use of force, the ability to control your impulses and act with intention. A man guided by reality and not by ideals understands that relationships don't follow straight lines. They oscillate. And this oscillation only destroys those who don't have their own loyal armies, purpose, routine, focus, projects. When you have a life that sustains you, these tests lose their power. They become just small waves on the surface of the water, not storms. Machiavelli would say that the end justifies the means here. Maintaining your dignity is worth more than winning an argument or responding the next second. The worst mistake a man can make during a test is asking for explanations. This puts you in the role of the pursued, while she assumes, even unintentionally, the position of emotional authority. Questions like, "Are you acting strange? Why didn't you answer? Did I do something wrong?" reveal insecurity. And insecurity undermines the entire structure of attraction. The hunter, on the other hand, reacts calmly. He doesn't ignore, he remains himself. He responds naturally, shifts the focus to his own life, keeps the conversation light, and doesn't try to decipher every detail as if he were diffusing a bomb. This posture shows decisions based on real human nature, firmness with lightness, presence without desperation. And it is this behavior that creates the kind of stability that prepares the ground for something even more important than the initial game, sustaining attraction over time. without losing your identity. A long-term relationship isn't sustained by initial passion, nor by exaggerated romantic displays. It's sustained by identity. When a man loses his identity, when he stops training, evolving, pursuing his goals, cultivating his own loyal armies, he automatically loses attraction. Not because the other person is cold, but because true human nature doesn't respect someone who abandons themselves. Machiavelli would say that this is the price of governing without virtue. You become vulnerable to the fluctuations of fortune. In a healthy relationship, fortune enters your world, but doesn't replace it. Your life shouldn't be paused so that love can continue to exist. On the contrary, your life should continue to grow so that love has a place to dwell. When a man lives with politics guided by reality, not by ideals, he builds a stable emotional environment, and stability is one of the most powerful forms of continuous attraction. Emotional stability is extremely rare, and that's precisely why it's so valuable. Most men fluctuate too much. One day they're secure, the next they're needy. Today they're strong, tomorrow they're lost. This inconsistency drains the relationship and destroys respect. True stability is born from what you do daily. Discipline, purpose, structured plans, a healthy social life, clear goals. This is calculated use of strength, putting energy where it builds, not where it begs. An emotionally stable man doesn't react impulsively to the other person's mood swings. He observes, breathes, and responds calmly. This posture communicates maturity, depth, and presence. And solid presence creates desire. Not the explosive desire of the beginning, but the calm, secure, continuous desire. The kind of desire that makes someone think, I can trust this. And trust is gold in any long-term dynamic. Boundaries and self-esteem are the backbone of any lasting relationship. Without boundaries, you become an emotional doormat. Without self-esteem, you become an emotional burden. Boundaries don't push away, they protect. Self-esteem doesn't push away, it attracts. This is where the appearance of virtue comes in. Not just looking like someone of value, but acting like someone of value. Saying no when necessary, choosing your battles, maintaining your integrity, protecting your dreams, preserving your routine. This isn't selfishness, it's self-respect. And when you respect yourself, the other person naturally respects you too. It's this structure that keeps attraction alive not for weeks, but for years. And when a man understands this, he finally grasps the central truth of this entire journey. Attraction isn't about chasing or ignoring. It's about maintaining your identity while creating an emotional connection. And it's this understanding that weaves together the entire central message and paves the way for the powerful introduction you requested. Ultimately, the question you need to ask yourself isn't, how do I make her like me? But who do I become when I no longer depend on that validation? Because that's where the magic begins. When you stop chasing, stop begging, stop contorting yourself to fit someone else's expectations, you finally return to yourself, and a man who returns to himself is impossible to ignore. Machiavelli would say that real power lies not in dominating others, but in dominating oneself, and that's exactly what you've learned here. Now the decision is in your hands. Will you continue reacting to the emotional crumbs offered to you, or will you begin to act like someone who respects themselves, who possesses virtue, and who understands that fortune favors those who act with intention? Will you continue reacting in the next second, or will you learn to breathe before acting? Will you continue allowing any emotional test to destabilize you, or will you finally build the stability that attracts, retains, and inspires respect? The question is simple, but the answer changes your entire life. And before we end this video, I want you to reflect in silence. What part of this content challenged you the most? What truth resonated most strongly with you? Write in the comments. This helps not only you to see yourself, but also other people who are going through the same process. And of course, if you want to continue learning about emotional power, Machiavelli applied to real life, strategic communication, and attraction that comes from identity, not desperation, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Your evolution starts now, and I will guide you on this journey.